5:30, and I will call our city council meeting into order. We have several items on the agenda tonight, but before we get started, I'm going to turn it over to Alan Barnes to introduce to us a new employee, an interim employee.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Tom Henry. Mr. Henry comes to us from the city of Grand Prairie and the city of Haltom City before that. He is going to be our interim Parks and Recreation Director. Tom, you want to get up and say a word or two?
Howdy.
Hello.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, as Mr. Barnes said, I'm Tom Henry. I have 38 years of experience in municipal parks and recreation, served at a number of cities throughout North Texas. I'm happy to be in Stephenville, Texas to help you guys transition to your new parks director. I told both Jeff and Alan that I plan to live in Stephenville for the duration of my contract so that I would be available and get a better feel of the town. So I'm here, I'm ready to go to work.
Good deal. Appreciate you inviting. Anybody want to say anything? Well, you'll have an opportunity for us to say stuff to you.
All right? Yeah, this probably won't be the last chance you get a chance to.
Welcome to Stephenville, Texas. Okay, we'll go to our agendas. Item number 2 is the first reading of an ordinance granting to Atmos Energy Corporation a franchise to construct, maintain, and operate pipelines and equipment in the city of Stephenville. And I'm going to turn it over to Staci to read the introduction.
Okay, so by charter, we are required to read a franchise ordinance 3 times before we can pass it. And so this is your first reading of an ordinance granting to Atmos Energy Corporation, a Texas and Virginia corporation, its successors and assigns a franchise to construct, maintain, and operate pipelines and equipment in the city of Stephenville, Erath County, Texas, for the transportation, delivery, sale, and distribution of gas in, out of, and through said city for all purposes, providing for the payment of a fee or charge for the use of public rights-of-way, and providing that such fee shall be in lieu of other fees and charges, accepting ad valorem taxes, and repealing all previous gas franchise ordinances. And Ms. Rochelle Detmore is here from Atmos for any questions y'all have.
Anybody have any questions? These are first of 3 readings.
That's correct, sir.
All right. Hearing none, we'll go on to the next item. You'll be here for another agenda here in a minute too. So you didn't drop all the way for
That's right.
2 minutes. Okay. Now, second item is to consider approval of resolution approving a negotiated settlement between the Atmos City Steering Committee and Atmos Corporation. I'm going to turn that over to Alan.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we are members of the Texas Atmos Cities Steering Committee. That's a group of cities, most cities in North Texas. And they have negotiated a rate review for 2020, and Rochelle Ditmore is here to discuss that with council.
If anybody has any questions?
You'll give us your name and who you're with and where you live, and we'll maybe ask some questions for you.
Mayor and City Council, thank you for having me tonight. We're on the agenda twice for you guys, so and I drove through pouring rain coming in, so that's great news. So the rate review mechanism, y'all are members of the coalition, so you have people that represent you and fight for the best rates that you can get. And so this year the rates will go up, I think it's about an average of $5.86 a customer. And that has already been negotiated by the group that y'all belong to.
You have any questions?
Is that for residential customers?
Yes, that's
Or
residential.
What about commercial?
Commercial is, I think, 17 something, but I don't remember the pennies, the cents on it, but $17 and something.
Okay.
And that's the base charge would go up?
Yes. Yes.
And the delivery rate remains constant, goes down?
It's by the price of gas, you mean?
Right.
Yes, and they're still staying stable and still down, so.
Anybody else? You're asking for a resolution.
Yes, sir. We respectfully recommend the approval of this resolution It was negotiated by, Gosling, I can't remember, Lloyd Gosling, law firm out of Austin. Our representative is a gentleman by the name of Tom Bricado. Mr. Bricado is known across the state to beat down the gas companies and electric companies as much as they can. He's a very outstanding utility attorney, and I've used him in the past in several other cities.
Anybody have any questions for Alan? Do I hear a motion?
Mayor, I move approve resolution 2020-R-19.
Very much motion.
I'll second.
Mark seconds. Any further discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. Motion passes. Thank you all. I guess Monica, you're up next. Set a minimum proposed tax rate. Thank you all for coming. I hope it's raining on your way back.
I hope our body follows me all the way.
Thank you.
Mayor, Council, according to the Section 2605 of our tax code, the governing body of each taxing unit shall adopt a tax rate for the current tax year and shall notify the assessor for the taxing unit of the rate adopted. We have to adopt a tax rate before September 30th or 60th day after the date the certified appraisal roll is received by the taxing unit. We did not receive our certified rate until August 26th, so we applied the formulas required by the state. Our 2019 property tax rate was 47 cents per 100. Our 2020 no new revenue tax rate is .4347 cents per 100. This is the rate that basically gives the city the same revenue as what we received last year. The 2020 voter approval tax rate is .4574 per 100. This is including the 3.5% increase that we're allowed to go to. That does not require a vote by the voters, an election. The 2020 de minimis tax rate is .6016 cents per 100. This is the rate that would get the city, is supposed to be the rate that would get the city $500,000 additional revenue. We're in a little different scenario in that our de minimis tax rate is above our voter approval tax rate. So if the council were to adopt a rate above the 45.74 cents per 100, the voter approval rate, but below the 60.16 cents per 100 de minimis rate, then the voters could petition for an election to roll that back to the voter approval rate. In order to do that, it's required a petition of 3% of our registered voters. So what we have in the budget that we've been talking about and that will be presented for approval next Tuesday is the voter approval rate of 45.74 cents per 100. Are there any questions? And there's a summary that kind of explains the amount of the levies. So at the 45.74, the total levy would be $6,650,643. Some of that goes to debt service. So our 2020 debt tax rate is .0182 cents per 100. And it's roughly $265,300 is our tax rate. We also have some of the money goes into the TIF. There's $835,000 worth of increased value for those properties that were in the TIF. That roughly $3,500, a little more, would go into the TIF to pay some of the debt related to the TIF, and then the remainder would come into the general fund. So as you can see, the proposed, if the council was to adopt the voter approval tax rate of .4574, then there'd be an additional $330,000 worth of revenue coming in. And so that's what we have in the budget, which allowed us to include the 3 firefighters and also the $98,000 for the Bosque River Trail improvements, repairs that need to be made.
Questions?
And at that tax rate, Monica, what is the additional dollars beyond what's been budgeted, excess?
It's roughly $98,000.
98,000.
Anybody else? Do I hear a motion?
For the sake of the meeting tonight, Mr. Mayor, I move that we set the maximum allowable tax rate at .4574 per $100 evaluation, which is the voter approval tax rate.
Second.
Clerk makes the motion, and Alan, was that you?
Yes, sir.
Further discussion? See the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. Motion passes. We have a new tax rate. Anything else, Monica?
Not for that one.
Okay. Next item is to set a time and date for the public hearings on the proposed tax rate. Monica, give us a report.
So now that you've set the maximum proposed tax rate, we actually have to have a hearing since it's the, since you have proposed the voter approval rate. We have to have one hearing and then we can adopt it. And the hearing has to be 7 days, 5 business days after it's advertised. So we will get the Jennifer Carey with the county to advertise on Saturday. So we're requesting to have the date and time set for the 15th of September for the hearing. And at that time, the county, the city will need to adopt a rate. Or
Any
you
questions?
can choose to.
We don't, I guess we have to set a motion to do that. So here a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we set the time for the date and time for the public hearing on the proposed tax rate as it's been presented.
I second that.
Next motion, and Gerald seconds it. Any discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. Motion passes. So we have a maximum rate and now a date set for the meeting. All right, thank you. Our next item is going to be Planning and Zoning Commission. Steve, come up front. We're going to be entering into a public hearing on case number RZ 2020-007. Give a staff report.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Case number RZ 2020-007 is applicant Jody Benham, and he's requesting a rezone of 1540 West Long, being Lot 2, Block 8 of Southside Addition for Stephenville, Texas, Erath County. He is requesting from industrial to multifamily R3, and this does conform with the comprehensive plan in regards to future land use. On August 19th, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this request and voted unanimously to recommend approval of the change in zoning from industrial to multifamily. This property, as you'll see in your packet with the maps, currently has some mobile homes on the property, and he's wanting to remove those mobile homes and build a multifamily property in the future. It does have water and sewer available, and again, meets the future land use of the comprehensive plan. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Steve?
So that industrial zoning there, Steve, that exists because the mobile homes are already on not only that subject property, but the ones that surround it?
That is correct, sir.
Anybody else?
Steve, isn't that industrial the only permitted use for a mobile home location in the city?
Actually, we have a mobile home designation now, and the requirements for a mobile home park are pretty exhaustive and requires a certain number of units as well as streets, road signs, and things of that nature. So with that, the restrictions are pretty extensive for in-town development of mobile home properties. So we were very pleased to see that Mr. Benham was wanting to move forward with a multifamily property.
This is across Long Street from the city cemetery, correct?
Correct, that is correct.
And I don't think those residents will complain.
Probably
He
not.
asked questions, so he could tell that joke.
Ask Frank, could you,
I don't bet on that.
anybody have any other questions or comments?
I'm smiling under here, I promise.
All right, if there are other comments or questions, I'm going to open a public hearing. Is there anybody here that would like to speak in favor of the rezoning request? Anybody here want to speak in opposition to the rezoning request? Hearing none, then we're going to close the public hearing and move to item 2, which consider approval of the ordinance to rezone property located at 1540 West Long Street being, you can read it. Do we hear a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning of the property located at 1540 West Lawn.
Second.
This next motion, Brady, was that you?
Alan.
Alan, okay. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item,
Yes, sir. Case number RZ 2020-008 is applicant Mauro Matai. He is present tonight. He is requesting a rezone for 811 North Miller, being Lot 9A, Block 2 of the Miller Addition for the city of Stephenville, Urath County, Texas. He's wanting to change this from B1, neighborhood business, to industrial. That was his application. During the P&Z meeting on August 19th, the applicant actually, after realizing that the permitted uses for his intended use would also work for a B2 zoning, agreed to the B2, which is a lesser zoning and more compliant with the neighboring properties. As you will see, this request does not conform to the comprehensive plan in regards to future land use designation, but the properties to the west of this property have similar zoning, and so the P&Z did recommend approval for this request. Property is, intended use for this property is going to be a gym with some martial arts training. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
so if we make you magic over and whoop us all tonight? Questions?
Steve, the property west of it is the property that faces Graham, correct?
I believe that is correct, sir.
And it is and has in the future zoning that it is a B2?
That is correct.
Okay. This would comply with that zoning, but not with what our future zoning recommends, which is R1 on the east side of that street.
Yes, sir, you are correct. Miller actually delineates the two zonings, east and west. So the properties to the east of Miller are future land use, single-family. Properties to the west are B2, well, actually commercial for future land use designation. So the commission actually discussed this and had some comments after the motion was made, and some of them had some personal knowledge of the properties and adjacent properties and uses of those properties, and they felt that it would be a good addition to the neighborhood. So it was a productive conversation, and again, they asked Mr. Matai if he would be willing to change that from industrial to B2, because it would conform more closely to the neighboring properties, and he was fully agreeable to that, and he is here to verify that if necessary. So very, very cooperative, very open to the requested consideration for that B2 zoning.
Any other questions?
I just had a comment. I think this is another example of our future land use maybe not making a whole lot of sense when you look at the whole plan and how it backs up to certain things. So I'm happy to hear the planning and zoning having a conversation and coming to an intelligent decision like that.
And you're going to take care of that other issue, aren't you?
Correct.
On your committee, okay. Any other questions? We're going to ask Mr. Matai to come up and speak to us. Come up and if you'll give us your name and address. While he's coming up here, I want you to know, many of y'all know him. I had an opportunity to spend one afternoon with him for about an hour, and he's an incredibly pleasant fellow. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the City Council. I really appreciate you guys giving me an opportunity to be here. My family and I just recently moved to Stephenville, and we have made Stephenville home. We used to be in Odessa, Texas, so the change of scenery just went back. It rains, yes, and it rains. And
Green.
yes, and I've been in law enforcement for about approximately 8 years now, and one of the main purposes that I want to build a gym is just mainly a training facility that I can help out with our first responders and police officers. Most of us know what's going on in America recently, the incidents that we had, and the president just passed a new law, which doesn't allow to use the chokehold, which is one of the maneuvers that people use to control a resisting person. But I don't believe that not being able to use something that the way the law states is prohibited unless deadly force is required. So there will be situations that deadly force will be required. So we should be able to train in situations if we're gonna use. It's just like we carry a firearm, so we don't use a firearm all the time, but like we go to the shooting range so we can get proficient at it. So when it's time to use, then we know how to use it. It's the same as a chokehold. If we don't train, we're not going to know how to use it. So we need to train in case we need to use it. And bringing a gym, my main purpose is just to help our community. I mean, it's a business, yes, but I'll be able to provide, free training for our first responders and police officers. And that's the main reason that I want to build a gym around here. And,
Any questions?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Matai is also certified in teaching law enforcement.
Yes.
He's spent a lot of classes, and he and the chief have spent time together, and I think he'll be a big asset to us. Okay, any other questions? Anything else you want to say about your request?
No, just thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to enter into a public hearing then. And in doing so, I'm going to ask anybody want to come and speak for the application? I'm going to speak in opposition to the application. I'll close the public hearing and go in and consider approval of the ordinance. Do I hear a motion?
Mayor, I move we approve the rezoning of the property located at 811 North Miller from B1 to B2.
Second.
Brandon, is that you?
Yes, sir.
Is that mask? I have a motion, second. Further discussion. Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. Motion passes. You have your rezoning, sir. Thank you for what you do for Stephenville, Texas.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Okay, next item is Planning and Development Services Committee. Mr. Huckabee.
All right. The Planning and Development Services Committee met and had discussions on a couple of subjects. First one is sidewalk subdivision waiver process. We talked through that process and kind of brainstormed some different ideas that were given to staff. We're going to continue to work through those as staff and possibly bring some changes back that were mentioned to future committee meetings and come through that to try to make that an easier, more streamlined process. No action was taken on that item. Second item we talked about was a new program that Steve had brought to me, and then we brought to y'all a multifamily permitting and inspection program. We had some very good discussion on what something like that would look like, or baby steps to a program like that, where we can ensure that our citizens that are living in rental properties are living in safe, healthy conditions. So again, some very good conversation and feedback was given on that, and there's going to be further dialogue between Steve, staff, myself, and then bring it back to the committee and have further discussion. No action was taken on that, and with that, we're done.
Okay, thanks, sir. Mr. Robinson, Parks and Leisure Services.
Thank you, Mayor. On August 18th, the Parks and Leisure Services Committee met to discuss submitting for the TxDOT Green Ribbon grant. This is a grant that we've received in the past for the landscaping, the medians, $400,000 grant. The only cost that the city would encumber would be for design, and that's covered under our undesignated grant match, as well as ongoing maintenance. This does come to council with a favorable recommendation, and I'd be glad to make that in the form of a motion.
Anybody have any questions?
No, but I'll second his motion.
Okay, motion from Nick, second by Mark. Further discussion? Proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. Motion passes. Anything else, Mr. Robinson?
No, sir, that completes my report.
Thank you. Ms. Harris. Monthly staff or budget report. And I want everybody, everybody knows this, but she's been through a Dickens lately on this budget issue and taxes, and so everybody needs to pat her on the back.
Mayor, council, this is the budget review for the period ending July 31st, which our financial indicators are what we'd expect considering the impact of COVID-19. For property tax, we received $42,000 in property taxes in July, which resulted in $426,000 or 7.03% increase over the funds collected through July last fiscal year. The $6.48 million collected through July is 100.85% of what we did budget. However, about $200,000 of that will be taken back. We've sent back to FMC due to their lawsuit. So, the sales tax, we received $500,000 in sales tax in July, which is $21,000 or 4.48% more than the funds collected last year. The $5.2 million collected is 79.3% of the $6.57 million budgeted, which is about 3.5% less than what we would have anticipated, and that's due to COVID-19. For hot funds, we received $254,000 in revenue in hotel occupancy tax fund through July, as compared to $355,000 last July. We spent $138,000 in hotel occupancy funds, as compared to $393,000 last year. Both of these are a direct reflection of the impact of COVID-19. The target budget, which would be about 83%. So in revenue, our target budget was $24.1 million. We received $24.08 million in revenue, which is $20,000 under our target budget. This is a result of COVID-19 and our sales tax. The target budget for operating expenditures is $17.4 million. We've expended $15.4 million through July, so we're about $1.9 million under our target budget. Our operating revenue received last year was $23 million. The current year is $24.08 million, which is $1.13 million increase, and that's due to service charges, property taxes, grants, and insurance proceeds. Our operating expenditures last year were $15.36 million. The current year is $15.43 million, which is a $76,000 increase, and that had to do with wages and benefits, maintenance, and marketing and grants for SEDA. For our new program, obviously our downtown revitalization project and the CDBG GLO project are still in progress. Everything else is kind of winding down since it's toward the ends of the fiscal year. Are there any questions?
How much of that, did you go back and add up quickly for us, or just give us a round number? How much of that's related to COVID? The losses?
In the revenue?
Just ballpark. What I'm asking is, we had $1.25 million allocated. How much of that we're going to get back because of losses of revenue? That's one of the options to pay for.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. We are in the process of gathering the information for the salaries paid during that time. Fire department salaries alone paid since the COVID is a little over $600,000. We anticipate the salaries paid to the police department will be in excess of that.
So that's where the 1.2 is going to be. It's going to be an offset for current expenditures, which means
Can be, yes, sir.
That's a revenue source to us, $1.2 million.
That's correct. That's correct.
And that hasn't been calculated in there. We've lost about $264,000 in sales tax, and I'm
Because it's allowed, we're allowed to offset losses too due to COVID.
No, sir.
You can't
It's just been-
offset revenue loss, no, but.
It's new expenditures.
But expenditure losses.
Right, and the salaries for our public safety personnel Even though it was already budgeted, that is one of the things that was considered that we get. So we anticipate that we will be able to fulfill the 1.2 million completely with public safety salaries, just their straight time. Then there's a FEMA grant that'll be available that we will look at applying the overtime where we had to work overtime due to COVID-related stuff, and then also some of our PPE and things like that to turn in for FEMA.
There may be some of your street money right there.
Yeah.
So have you received any guidance from the comptroller or anybody at the state level about what to anticipate moving into the new budget year regarding sales tax?
No, not really, because I don't think anybody's 100% sure, to be honest.
They're not throwing out a 2% or 1.5%?
I haven't seen anything.
I mean, our numbers have been really good the last few months. We had the 2-month dip.
Comptroller's estimating a 4.3 million deficit. Now, a bunch of that's, I'm sure, oil sales, but, you know, that's a lot of money. And a bunch of that's from sales tax.
Right, and so moving forward in the budget, we did not budget an increase in sales tax, any growth in sales tax next year.
Anybody else?
Mayor, I've got a question that's kind of related to, I understand fire and EMS and police or public safety. What about our public works? Because they are involved in public safety too, with water, wastewater, streets, et cetera. Do their wages apply to that?
It's my understanding that the money from TDM, the Texas Department of Emergency Management, specifically outlines that the CARES funds are to be used by public safety specifically.
Well, if that's the case, you've already told us that we've got 1.2 million already in fire and police. So
Yes,
We just need to
but-
fill, and that's all we can get.
So we might get a second time.
At this point, that's all that,
There's
yes.
some additional funding. We understand there may be some additional funding coming from Washington to Austin.
Boston's received $15 billion in COVID money so far.
That's the additional money.
Okay. Other questions for Monica? I'm sorry. What's that number, just by the way?
Oh,
Just
the,
round numbers.
sorry. I think we're looking at about 350,000 between sales tax and hot funds.
So that's about 4%.
And the difference, so this has to do, the revenue budgetary comparison, operating revenue of 24 million, that includes what in addition to sales tax and property tax?
That charges for services, interest earned.
Okay.
The money we get on licensing and permits are fines and fees at the court, which obviously some of that has been down because we can't could not issue some tickets on some things during this time. Those kind of things.
Does that answer your question, Justin?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Other questions? Thank you, Monica. All right, does anybody have on their iPhone one of those things that goes tick, 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 you can put a timer?
No, sir, but I can download one real quick.
Yeah, you can download one real quick.
It would be my pleasure to get off the
Mr.
stage.
Sandford. I said it right this time.
I don't know. That's
Don't
right.
get no respect.
That's all right. That's all right. I'll bring it on, so it's good. Howdy. Hope y'all are doing well tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you in person. It's good. As I've said before, many of y'all look better with the masks on than without, so it's good to see y'all that way. We have a couple of things we want to talk about very quickly. First of all, y'all are reviewing budgets and such. I just wanted to have a couple of points on that. With the cut in revenue here recently, we immediately found some areas to trim back expenditure-wise on this last budget, even though it wasn't budgeted for a loss, obviously. We redirected some reserve funds to develop and implement the Restart program. We've assisted nearly 400 businesses through this time period. And for the third time under my watch anywhere, that's all I can account for, we are under budget and look to place more into our reserve account for 3 consecutive years. Over a 5-year period, we've expended just a little over $1 million of our receivables, and yet that's resulted in over $70 million in new construction by year's end. Pretty good ROI, as you say, Mayor. So one to get 70, and we think that that's going to improve even more with a couple of projects we're working on right now. Our Restart program, just a couple of updates on that. As you know, we launched our targeted marketing program in June. It will sunset the first round in the end of September with the fiscal year. We're negotiating with Buxton for a second round to begin October 1 so that we can reach more businesses if necessary. We also launched our personal services grant loan program, which sunset at the end of July. The results of that were 10 grants given for $25,000. It's a grant loan program. They have to be in business for 90 days. Of course, we're not at that mark yet, so we'll be watching that to see. But so far, it's gone over very, very well. And then for round 2 of that, we changed it to a small business response loan grant program with the city, of course. That's the one we do in conjunction with the city. So far, we have 4 grants currently in the approval process, which will be about $10,000 into that. We look for more. That will also sunset at the end of this fiscal year. So basically the end of this month. And so we'll look to see if we need to do that again going into the next one. We have 14 total, so 10 left to potentially give out. Additional PPE, of course, everybody knows we have masks. I just want to make that public again, that if people still need masks to wear, we do have a number of those left that the city and ourselves, SEDA has bought for folks that we can distribute and have been distributing to businesses all across the community. So the next piece kind of is related a little bit to what was just discussed in the Monica's part on the finance. As you heard, and I hope this didn't get lost in the shuffle, although we've had some losses here and there, we are up, and I think, Brandon, you might have said this, we are kind of on a swing back upwards on the sales tax receipts. Things are getting back in gear. We've had a number of businesses that continue to ask us, what does this really look like? The numbers. We need to know these numbers because it's going to affect our decisions. And while we, of course, always are saying to use proper protocols and to continue to do the kinds of things you need to do to maintain safety and so forth, they still want to know what these numbers are. So looking at the trade area, you can't really see it on this map because I don't have it on the screen, but the blackened area, if you can see it at all, is the area that we look at to make a mark. That's Erath County and the 9 counties around it, and then we also do it with 11 more counties, so 12 total counties. And we give this information to the businesses as they ask. In the 10-county area, even after 6 months, and by the way, this is still a little bit like, if someone said it the other day, it's like counting rain. You know, when you say you have 30 inches in a year or 30 inches of rain, it's over the whole year. It's not in one weekend or one day or one time period. The rain dries up, and then more rain comes later, much like we have here today. And that's the same with some of these cases. We've had a number of cases, about 2173, I think, is the total over the 10-county area. It's 0.9% after 6 months. That does not include recoveries. That is simply what is what the total amount of exposure. In the 12-county area, which goes through Parker and Brown, it's at 1.1%. Again, this does not include recoveries. Both numbers go significantly lower whenever you include those. Texas, who does count the recoveries as a comparison, 2.1% of Texas roughly has been exposed, but currently it's 3.6 of 1%. 3.6 of 1%. And that has gone down each and every week. It was 4.6, then 4.3, and now 3.6. Nationally, 1.85% of the country has been exposed. But with recoveries, which they are counting, 8.7, again under 1%. 8.7 of 1% is currently exposed or not considered recovered. Globally, I don't even know how to say these numbers, but it's total globally is 0.3 of 1%. That's before recoveries. If you count recoveries, it's a lot of zeros before you get to a 1 after the decimal point. So we'll just it's not out there. If we can just get a vaccine, then it would no longer be considered a pandemic. Moving on to some other things for us. SEDA had a meeting in August, and due to Miss Shelby Slauson becoming Representative-elect Shelby Slauson, she stepped back from the chairmanship of SEDA. She's going to remain on the board for the remainder of the year until she's officially becomes Representative Slauson. But we did move into those positions. Chris Gifford elevated into the chairmanship, and Marion Cole is the vice chair. And what's important about those is those will be the 2 representatives on the TERS board as well, should we need to meet for anything down the road. And of course, we want to thank Shelby. She's done a great job. She was our chair for a year and a half following Mr. Cook, and has continued that legacy and done a good job with us. And we're very, very, very pleased to have had her there. Lastly, for the first time in our brief history, Stephenville will be represented at the Texas Economic Development Council's annual conference as part of a best practices model for economic developers across the state. We'll be presenting for the entire state. We were asked to present at the conference based on our recent success in attracting new development on a shoestring budget, or how we do more with less. I think, Mayor, you've said that sometimes for us to be cognizant of, as well as our strategies during the COVID crisis. And our focus will also include, and we'll make sure that this is going to be a prominent point, that it's the success has been because of our collaboration, successful collaboration with the city of Stephenville. So we're looking forward to presenting that. We'll actually present twice, once in September on a recorded one, and then in October at the actual conference. So pleased to be able to do that. And other than that, any other questions from you guys?
Any questions? Woo! I appreciate it.
Well, I took out the rap song. Monica and I are working on a rap song for next time. So.
Thank you. Your time's finished. Thanks, Jeff. All right, thanks, sir. Consent agenda, do I hear a motion?
Mayor, I move for the consent agenda as presented.
Second. Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed. Consent agenda is passed. Comments by city manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, will be closed Labor Day, September the 7th. We'll have committee council meetings on the 15th at 5:30. The regular council meeting is October 6th at 5:30. We're accepting applications for citizens, boards, and commissions from 1 September through 6 November. There is an emergency special election for Texas Senate District 30. The early voting is September 14 through 25, and election day is September 29. Early voting for November 3rd begins October 13th. And we also will have our budget hearing, public hearing on our budget on October the 8th at 5:30 p.m. I'm sorry, September the 8th at 5:30 p.m. I was looking at the wrong line on the calendar. But that's all, Mr. Mayor.
We're just going to go around the room here. Comments from city council.
Praise God for the rain.
There you go.
Amen. That's it.
I just want to welcome Mr. Henry to town. He's got extremely large shoes to fill.
I'd just like to welcome Mr. Henry to town also, and we look forward to working.
Alan?
I'd like to welcome Mr. Henry, but I don't see him, and I was curious if he was kin to the Henry rifle family. I didn't get to ask him that.
Engraving, right? Great.
No comment.
Justin?
Again, Mr. Henry, welcome to Stephenville. Looking forward to it, and I know you bring hopefully a lot to the Parks Department and helping try to fill this role that Jim played many years. And I believe we have fireworks this week. Is that right? So come out, enjoy some football, some Yellow Jacket football, and then celebrate with the fireworks show after.
Thank you. I just have a question. Do you know how the Commissioners Court voted on the early voting locations? Anybody know? The local, how did the Commissioners Court vote on where they would house early voting?
The November election, they won't have any early voting in the courthouse. They've got larger locations set up so there can be social distancing between them.
Okay, I don't usually get involved in other politics, and guys that aren't listening now or are listening, I apologize for doing so. One of the things I'm concerned about is that Dublin doesn't have a voting location for early voting.
At the Church of Christ.
In Dublin,
Yes.
I was told Stephenville's where the church.
Both.
So they did do
Yes,
open,
sir.
okay, very good, thank you. We just need to make sure that we're represented, because it's a big election. We're now voting in a catchment area for a center it's like 1 million population, something like that. So it's really important that all the citizens of Erath County get to vote, get to be heard. I think there's 7 or 6 candidates. Right. 7 candidates. It's going to be and there will be a runoff after that, because you're not going to get 51% with 7 candidates. All right, anybody else? Hearing none, then we're going to, no other items on the agenda, we're going to stand adjourned at 6:14. Thank you all for your attendance. Praise God for the rain.